Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. Have you ever apologized, not because you were wrong, but because you were afraid to take up space? This video might explain more about your heart than you realize. Sometimes we say sorry so often that it almost becomes invisible, a reflex we don't even notice. You might apologize for bumping into someone, for asking a question, for expressing a feeling, or for simply existing in a space that feels too crowded for your comfort. On the surface, it seems harmless, polite even, but underneath there's a deeper story, one rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of making someone uncomfortable. Over time, this habit teaches your mind that your presence, your feelings, your voice somehow need to be softened or diminished to protect the people around you. When you pause and reflect, you begin to see that most of the time, these apologies have nothing to do with actual wrongdoing. They are survival tools, ways your younger self learned to navigate uncertainty, conflict, or the quiet voice that said, "Don't take up too much space." It's easy to confuse harmony with self-erasure. You apologize to keep peace, but in the process, you shrink yourself. You might even start to feel guilty for existing, as if taking up space is somehow wrong. The first step toward change is simply noticing. Notice when the words, "I'm sorry," leave your lips automatically. Notice the moments when you feel compelled to soften yourself, not because you hurt someone, but because it feels safer. Awareness is not judgment, it is recognition. By recognizing this pattern, you can start to separate genuine responsibility from habit, shame, or fear. The simple act of pausing before saying sorry opens a space to ask yourself, am I apologizing because I need to or because I want to shrink? Once you recognize this, you can begin to reclaim your voice. Not every interaction requires an apology. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is exist fully, speak your truth, and allow your presence to be exactly what it is without softening it unnecessarily. I wasn't wrong. I was just scared to be uncomfortable. This line becomes a gentle reminder that fear has been guiding your words, and awareness gives you the power to respond differently. Start with small actions, pause before the next automatic apology, breathe, and speak with intention. Over time, this simple awareness becomes the first step toward honoring yourself and your presence in the world. There is a quiet weight that lives inside many of us, a weight we carry without ever fully naming it. It whispers that our feelings are too much, that our needs are inconvenient, that expressing ourselves fully will somehow push people away. This weight often hides beneath the habit of over-apologizing, beneath the moments when we soften our words, when we tone down our laughter, or when we shrink our ideas to make space for others. Over time, it becomes so familiar that we mistake it for reality. We think this is how life is meant to be: cautious, careful, unobtrusive. But in truth, this weight is shame speaking. It tells us that we are burdensome simply for existing. When you look back at the moments you apologized unnecessarily, you may notice a pattern. It's not about whether you actually caused harm. It's about the fear of being seen, the fear of being judged, the fear of your true self being too much for someone else. This is where shame begins to live. Shame is a quiet, persistent force that convinces us that to belong, we must shrink, hide, and make ourselves smaller. It can masquerade as politeness or kindness, whispering, "Say sorry, it will make it easier for everyone." The truth is, it makes it easier for everyone else, but it diminishes you. Shame has a way of embedding itself deeply in our consciousness. It doesn't need loud accusations to exist. It thrives in the pauses, in the half-formed apologies, in the words we never say but think constantly. It teaches us that our feelings are inconvenient, that our opinions are secondary, that our presence is negotiable. And when we start to internalize this message, we begin to over-apologize, not as a choice, but as a reflex. Saying "I'm sorry" becomes a way to navigate the world safely, a way to protect ourselves from the uncomfortable gaze of judgment. The irony is that in protecting ourselves from potential shame, we reinforce it, creating a cycle that's hard to break. This cycle can affect every part of life. You might notice it in your relationships where you apologize for expressing your desires, even the most reasonable ones. You might notice it at work where you soften your contributions to avoid rocking the boat. You might notice it in your friendships where you laugh off your feelings or minimize your needs because you are afraid that insisting on them will make you unlikable. Each unnecessary apology chips away at the foundation of your self-worth, teaching your mind that your presence is conditional. It is never just about the words. It is about what those words represent, the internalized belief that your existence needs to be justified. To begin unraveling this, the first step is awareness. Awareness is not judgment. It is a compassionate acknowledgement of what has been running unconsciously for years. Notice when you say, I'm sorry, even though you haven't caused harm. Notice the situations that trigger this reflex. Is it when someone looks disappointed? When you feel like you are taking up space? When your voice rises above the ambient noise of agreement? Each moment is a clue, a window into the silent messages of shame that have guided your behavior for far too long. Awareness allows you to separate your actions from your worth, to see that your presence is not the problem and that your needs are valid simply because you exist. Once you become aware, the next step is reflection. Reflection is about looking inward without condemnation. It is asking yourself questions you might have avoided. Why do I feel the need to apologize here? What am I afraid will happen if I don't? Who taught me that my existence is negotiable? Reflection reveals the root of the habit, often buried in past experiences or subtle messages we received growing up. Perhaps it was a family environment where disagreement felt dangerous, or social circles where being assertive was labeled as selfish. Maybe it was a series of relationships where your boundaries were dismissed, teaching you that your feelings were secondary. By naming these influences, you reclaim understanding and insight. You begin to recognize that your over-apologizing is not a flaw. It is a learned pattern, a strategy that once served a purpose but now no longer does. Acknowledging the role of fear in this habit is essential. Fear is what compels us to apologize unnecessarily. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear that we are too much, fear that asserting our boundaries will break the fragile balance we perceive in our relationships. This fear is deeply human. It is not weakness. It is the survival instinct attempting to protect us from emotional harm. But when fear dictates our words and actions, it becomes limiting. It prevents authentic expression, diminishes our confidence, and keeps us from stepping fully into our lives. Understanding that fear is behind the apology empowers you to respond differently. You no longer have to be ruled by a reflex born out of self-protection. You can choose courage instead. The next stage is practice, practicing small acts of reclaiming your voice. Start with tiny moments when someone interrupts you. Instead of softening your response with an apology, state your thought clearly. When you need to express a preference, do so without prefacing it with, I'm sorry for asking. Begin to notice the difference between genuine accountability and habitual apologies. Genuine accountability arises when you have caused harm. Habitual apologies arise when you are trying to prevent discomfort, either for yourself or others. This distinction is crucial. It allows you to engage with the world authentically while maintaining compassion for both yourself and those around you. Replacing unnecessary apologies with intentional language can feel strange at first. There will be moments when your old reflex fights back, when fear whispers that you must apologize to avoid disapproval. These moments are opportunities for growth. Pause, breathe, and choose your words deliberately. Instead of, I'm sorry for asking, try thank you for considering this. Instead of, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, try I appreciate your time. Each choice is a small act of courage, a statement that your presence, your voice, and your needs matter. Gradually, these acts reshape your inner narrative, teaching your mind that you can exist fully without shrinking, that you can take up space without guilt. Reflection also brings empathy toward oneself. Recognize that the habit of over-apologizing was once a survival mechanism. It protected you in moments when you felt vulnerable, uncertain, or unsafe. Compassion for yourself transforms guilt into understanding. It allows you to see that growth is not about condemning past behavior, but learning from it. Every unnecessary apology becomes a signal, a reminder to reconnect with your courage, to honor your voice, and to reclaim the dignity that comes from being unapologetically present. Ultimately, the goal is not to eliminate all apologies, but to align them with truth and intention. The power lies in differentiating between apologies that are necessary and those that are habitual. When you apologize from a place of authenticity, it becomes meaningful. When you refrain from apologizing out of fear, it becomes liberating. Over time, this practice cultivates self-respect and strengthens your relationships because others learn to interact with the real you, not the version of you conditioned to shrink, soften, or disappear. The process, ongoing. There will be moments of discomfort, moments when old habits resurface. That is natural. Each time it happens, you have an opportunity to pause, reflect, and choose differently. You begin to realize that your worth is inherent, that your presence does not need justification, and that your voice has value. Shame whispers, stay small, stay liked. But courage responds, I am enough. I belong. My voice matters. This transformation is not dramatic or immediate. It is quiet, subtle, and cumulative. Every moment you choose awareness over reflex, every time you speak without shrinking, every time you honor your feelings without apology, you chip away at the invisible weight that shame has placed on your heart. Slowly, you feel lighter, freer, more authentic. You learn that living with integrity and courage does not require constant self-effacement. You begin to understand that taking up space is not arrogance. It is a declaration of your right to exist fully and unapologetically. Through awareness, reflection, and intentional practice, you move from apologizing out of fear to responding with authenticity. You learn to honor your voice, to recognize the quiet whispers of shame, and to meet them with compassion and courage. And in that space, something remarkable happens. You begin to live with a sense of freedom and self-respect that transforms not only your words, but your relationships, your choices, and your inner life. Your apologies become rare, intentional, and powerful, and your life begins to feel expansive, grounded, and true. Courage is often misunderstood. Many believe it is something dramatic, something that happens in a single, bold act. Running into danger, confronting injustice, making a grand gesture. But real courage is quieter. It lives in the small, intimate spaces where our fears and our truths collide. It lives in the moments when we speak, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. It is the courage to stand in your own truth, to express your feelings, and to honor your voice even when the world is uncomfortable with it. Saying what you mean without cushioning your existence is one of the most courageous acts you can practice. When you apologize unnecessarily, you're often doing so out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict. Fear that if you express yourself fully, someone will disapprove, judge, or withdraw their affection. This fear can be subtle, almost invisible, but it shapes everything, your words, your tone, even your presence. Courage does not eliminate fear. Courage allows you to move forward despite fear. It asks you to recognize that discomfort is not a sign that you are wrong or unwelcome, but a sign that you are alive, present, and asserting your boundaries. The struggle many of us face is that we've been trained to equate our value with approval. From a young age, we learn that disagreement or assertiveness may lead to conflict, and conflict may lead to rejection. So we apologize, we soften our statements, we shrink. But courage asks us to do something radical, to disentangle our worth from the reactions of others. It asks us to recognize that our voice has value simply because we exist. The fear may still be there, but courage gives you permission to speak anyway. Courage begins with awareness. It begins with noticing the moments when you want to apologize simply to make others comfortable. It begins with understanding that these moments are often rooted not in wrongdoing, but in a deeply human desire to be liked, to belong, to avoid discomfort. When you see this clearly, you begin to understand that the act of apologizing out of fear is not harmless. It diminishes you. It sends a message to yourself and to the world that your presence is negotiable. Courage, on the other hand, insists that your presence is not only acceptable, but necessary. Practicing courage requires vulnerability. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the willingness to be seen as you are without pretense or apology. It means expressing your feelings, your opinions, and your needs honestly, even when there is no guarantee of acceptance. This is why courage and vulnerability are inseparable. You cannot stand in your truth without first allowing yourself to be seen fully and unapologetically. This is where many people falter. They mistake safety for truth, politeness for kindness, and fear for wisdom. Real courage requires leaning into the discomfort, knowing that your voice matters even when it creates tension. There will be moments when courage feels impossible, when fear whispers that asserting yourself is selfish, when shame reminds you that your needs are a burden, or when doubt convinces you that speaking up will only make things worse. These moments are exactly where courage is most necessary. Courage does not promise comfort, but it promises alignment. When you act courageously, your actions reflect your truth, and your presence becomes authentic. This alignment between inner values and outward behavior is liberating, even if it is uncomfortable in the moment. Choosing courage also requires practice. Start small. Speak your truth in minor situations. Express your preference without apologizing. Ask for what you need without fear of disapproval. Each small act becomes a training ground for greater courage. You will feel the resistance, the urge to soften your words, to apologize, to retreat. Notice it, recognize it, then choose differently. The first few times may feel unnatural, even risky. You may stumble, or others may respond with surprise or discomfort. This is normal. Courage is not about pleasing others. It is about being aligned with yourself. Courage transforms not only the way you speak, but the way you see yourself. Each act of courageous communication reinforces the belief that you are worthy, that your voice matters, and that your existence does not require justification. It weakens the power of shame, which thrives on secrecy, invisibility, and self-doubt. With courage, shame loses its grip. You begin to understand that discomfort is temporary, but the integrity of expressing your truth is enduring. There is a subtle but profound shift that happens when you choose courage over automatic apologies. You notice the freedom in your interactions. You notice the authenticity that emerges in relationships. People begin to respond to the real you, not the version conditioned to soften, diminish, or retreat. You begin to see that discomfort does not equal danger. Disagreement does not equal rejection. Expressing yourself fully does not mean you are selfish or burdensome. It means you are human, whole, and worthy of being heard. Courage is also contagious. When you act courageously, you give others permission to do the same. You model a way of being that honors truth over fear, presence over apology, authenticity over shrinkage. In choosing courage, you become part of a ripple effect, inspiring others to speak their truth, honor their boundaries, and embrace their own value. This is why the act of standing in your truth, even in small ways, is so powerful. It affects not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Ultimately, courage is about alignment. It is about ensuring that your words, your actions, and your presence reflect your inner truth. It is about refusing to let fear dictate the way you move through the world. When fear tempts you to apologize unnecessarily, courage invites you to pause, breathe, and choose a response that reflects your authenticity. It teaches you that discomfort is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are stepping into your own power. The journey toward courage is ongoing. It is not linear, and it is not always easy. You will stumble. You will retreat at times. Fear and doubt will resurface, and old patterns will attempt to reclaim their place. But each act of courageous expression weakens those patterns, strengthens your confidence, and deepens your self-respect. Over time, courage becomes not just an action, but a way of being, a steady internal compass that guides you to live in alignment with your truth. Courage allows you to stand in your truth without apology. It teaches you that your presence matters, your voice has value, and your needs are legitimate. It liberates you from the habit of shrinking and softening yourself to make others comfortable. It invites you to embrace vulnerability, to speak honestly, and to honor yourself fully, even when the world resists. And in doing so, you create a life that is not dictated by fear, but shaped by the authenticity, integrity, and power of your own voice. Courage sounds like this: I don't need to apologize to belong. This line is a quiet reminder that courage is not about impressing others or avoiding discomfort. It is about standing firmly in your truth, trusting yourself, and moving through the world with integrity and presence. When you choose courage, you choose freedom, the freedom to exist fully, unapologetically, and without shrinking. Change is never easy. It rarely comes as a sudden shift or a dramatic moment of revelation. Instead, it is quiet, gradual, and often uncomfortable. It begins in the small, almost invisible decisions we make each day. Decisions to pause, to notice, to respond differently, and to resist old patterns that no longer serve us. One of the most challenging of these patterns is the habit of apologizing unnecessarily, of softening ourselves to make others comfortable, of shrinking to avoid conflict. Change invites us to step out of that habit and rewire the way we interact with the world, our words, and most importantly, ourselves. The first thing to understand about this change is that it is not about perfection. It is not about never apologizing again or becoming insensitive to others. It is about intentionality. about aligning your actions with your truth. When you apologize habitually, your words are automatic. They serve as a reflex born from fear, shame, or the desire for approval. Change requires turning that reflex into conscious action. It is about asking yourself, do I really need to apologize, or am I doing this out of habit? That question, simple as it sounds, is a doorway to transformation. Breaking the pattern of habitual apologizing requires noticing the subtle ways fear and people-pleasing influence behavior. Fear whispers that disagreement might lead to rejection. People-pleasing convinces you that harmony is more important than honesty. Over time, these habits teach the mind to equate shrinking with safety. Every apology that is unnecessary reinforces the message that your presence, your needs, and your voice are secondary. Change asks you to interrupt that message, to recognize that your worth is not conditional on how others receive you. Change also requires courage, the courage to stand in your own truth even when it creates tension, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that discomfort is dangerous, that it threatens our relationships or our standing in the world. But discomfort is not a warning, it is a signal. It signals growth. It signals that you are stepping into a space that has been unfamiliar or avoided. Each time you choose truth over reflexive apology, you are stretching the boundaries of your comfort, teaching yourself that you can exist fully without diminishing yourself. A crucial part of this change is language. Words are powerful, they shape perception and reinforce internal narratives. When you replace automatic apologies with intentional expressions, you are rewriting the internal story that has guided your interactions for years. Instead of saying, I'm sorry if this bothers you, you might say, I appreciate your time and attention. Instead of, I'm sorry for asking, you might say, thank you for listening. Each conscious choice of words is an act of self-respect and an assertion of presence. Over time, these small shifts in language accumulate, creating a new pattern of interaction that is both authentic and courageous. Change also requires patience. Old habits do not disappear overnight. You will revert to automatic apologies in moments of fear or stress. You will stumble and feel the old shame creeping back in. That is not failure. It is the natural rhythm of growth. Each moment of awareness, each pause before speaking, each decision to honor your presence without apology is a victory. Over time, these victories build upon each other, creating momentum and confidence. You begin to trust yourself more, to feel your worth more deeply, and to interact with the world from a place of integrity rather than habit. Another essential aspect of change is self-compassion. As you notice your patterns, you may feel frustration or guilt for having apologized unnecessarily for so long. You may wonder why it took you so long to reclaim your voice. Self-compassion reminds you that these patterns were once protective, that they served a purpose in navigating fear, uncertainty, and past experiences. Being kind to yourself allows change to unfold without judgment. It allows you to see each step forward as progress, no matter how small. Compassion transforms discomfort into opportunity, frustration into insight, and habit into intentional practice. Change also involves embracing discomfort in relationships. When you stop apologizing unnecessarily, others may respond in ways that feel unfamiliar. They may be surprised, confused, or even challenged. This is a natural part of growth. Relationships adjust when one person begins to stand firmly in their truth. This does not mean your relationships will suffer. It means they will transform. You will attract connections that honor your authenticity, and you will release patterns that relied on your diminished presence. By leaning into this discomfort, you are creating space for more honest, meaningful, and respectful interactions. Reflection is an important companion to change. Taking time to notice your progress, to observe moments when you chose presence over apology, strengthens your awareness and reinforces new patterns. Journaling, meditating, or even quietly acknowledging victories in your mind can help solidify the changes you are making. Reflection allows you to celebrate growth, to learn from missteps, and to reinforce the internal understanding that your voice matters and your presence is enough. Ultimately, change is about freedom. The freedom to exist authentically, to speak with intention, and to take up space without guilt. It is the realization that apologies are not a currency for acceptance or belonging, but a tool for accountability when real harm occurs. Every step away from unnecessary apology is a step towards self-respect, emotional integrity, and empowerment. Change teaches that your presence does not require negotiation, your feelings do not require justification, and your voice has value simply because it belongs to you. In the process of change, you will discover a remarkable shift in how you relate to yourself and to others. You will notice the confidence that arises from aligning your words with your truth. You will feel the liberation of being heard without shrinking. You will observe the strength that comes from asserting your presence without guilt. And perhaps most importantly, you will realize that the courage to change is not about being fearless. It is about acknowledging fear, discomfort, and uncertainty and moving forward anyway. This transformation is gradual, cumulative, and deeply rewarding. Each choice to speak intentionally, each moment of pause before a reflexive apology, each act of self-respect contributes to a life that feels expansive, authentic, and grounded. You will begin to see that the world does not demand your diminishment and that living fully, honestly, and boldly is not only possible, it is necessary. Respect grows when apologies become intentional. This line becomes a quiet guide, a reminder that true respect, both for yourself and from others, emerges when your actions are deliberate, aligned with your truth, and free from reflexive fear. Change, then, is not simply a shift in words, it is a shift in being. It is the transformation from shrinking in the presence of fear to standing firmly in your own power, fully present, fully acknowledged, and fully alive. Growth is a quiet and often invisible process. It does not announce itself with fireworks or dramatic gestures, but instead, it unfolds in the small, consistent choices we make every day. Growth is the result of awareness, reflection, courage, and intentional change coming together over time. It is the accumulation of moments when we choose presence over apology, authenticity over fear, and self-respect over habit. True growth is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the way we respond to it, how we move forward, learn, and expand despite discomfort. When you stop apologizing unnecessarily, you begin to notice the space that opens up, not just around you, but within you. That space is the room to breathe, to think, to feel, and to exist without constant negotiation for approval. Growth begins in this space. It allows you to recognize that your presence, your voice, and your feelings are valid simply because you exist. You no longer need to earn your place by shrinking or softening yourself. The world does not require your diminishment, it requires your authenticity. This realization can be both liberating and unsettling. Liberation brings freedom, while unsettling moments arise because we are confronting a lifetime of conditioned behaviors and internalized beliefs. Growth asks us to sit with both feelings at once, to move forward even when the old patterns call us back. Growth also requires trust in yourself and in the process. You have learned patterns over years, sometimes decades. They do not disappear overnight. You will make mistakes. You will slip into old reflexive apologies, doubt your choices, or feel fear creep back in. This is natural. Growth is not linear. It is a spiral. Each misstep is not failure, but feedback, an opportunity to pause, observe, and redirect. It is in this ongoing practice of returning to awareness and intentionality that growth solidifies. Trusting yourself means believing that over time, your efforts to honor your presence and voice will reshape your inner narrative and your interactions with the world. An important aspect of growth is self-acceptance. Growth is not about becoming someone new. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that have been hidden, diminished, or silenced. It is about acknowledging your inherent worth and embracing the full spectrum of your emotions, thoughts, and desires. By accepting yourself, you create a foundation for authentic connection with others. You no longer approach relationships from a place of fear, habit, or apology. You approach them from honesty, integrity, and respect. Self-acceptance strengthens resilience. It allows you to weather criticism, conflict, or discomfort without internalizing it as a reflection of your worth. Growth is also about presence. When you choose not to apologize unnecessarily, you begin to inhabit your own life fully. You notice the difference between reacting automatically and responding intentionally. You feel the weight of your own voice, your choices, and your boundaries. This presence changes the way you relate to the world. You no longer move through life trying to soften your existence. Instead, you move with confidence, clarity, and grounded energy. Others begin to recognize this shift. responding to the real you rather than the diminished apologetic version they once knew. Presence becomes a gift to yourself and to those around you. Another facet of growth is responsibility, not in the sense of guilt or blame, but in the sense of ownership of your life and your choices. As you grow, you begin to see that your words, your actions, and your boundaries matter. You take responsibility for expressing your truth and honoring your feelings. You learn that accountability is different from habitual apology. Accountability arises when there is genuine harm or mistake. Habitual apology arises from fear and habit. Distinguishing between the two allows you to engage with the world authentically without diminishing yourself to make others comfortable. This responsibility cultivates integrity and reinforces self-respect. Growth also invites resilience. As you navigate the discomfort of breaking old patterns, you build emotional strength. Every time you pause before apologizing, every time you assert a boundary, every time you express your feelings without shrinking, you are exercising resilience. You are training yourself to tolerate discomfort, embrace uncertainty, and trust your own judgment. Resilience is not the absence of struggle. It is the capacity to move through struggle with awareness, courage, and a sense of self-worth intact. Over time, this resilience transforms fear into confidence and doubt into clarity. One of the most profound aspects of growth is the freedom it brings. Freedom from the need to seek approval in every interaction. Freedom from the habit of shrinking or softening yourself to avoid conflict. Freedom from internalized shame that has dictated your words and your presence for years. With this freedom comes the ability to fully inhabit your own life, to speak, act, and feel without unnecessary guilt or apology. You learn that your existence is not a negotiation, it is a right. You are allowed to occupy space, express your desires, and assert your boundaries simply because you belong here. Growth is cumulative. It is built on awareness, vulnerability, courage, and intentional change. Each choice to honor yourself, each refusal to apologize unnecessarily, each act of speaking your truth contributes to a larger transformation. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first your internal narrative shifts. You move from fear-driven reactions to intentional responses. You replace guilt with understanding, self-doubt with self-respect, and habit with integrity. Over time, this transformation becomes visible not only to you, but to everyone who interacts with you. You begin to live a life that is expansive, grounded, and authentic. Ultimately, growth is about claiming your full self. It is the understanding that your worth is inherent, that your voice matters, and that your presence has value without negotiation or apology. I belong here even without an apology. This line becomes a mantra, a quiet reminder that growth is not about seeking permission to exist, but about standing firmly in your truth, embracing your voice, and inhabiting your life fully. Growth is not a destination, it is a continual journey, one that deepens with every conscious choice, every act of courage, and every moment of self-respect. Through this process, you discover that the life you desire, the life where you feel confident, valued, and whole, is not something to earn or negotiate. It is something you cultivate from within. Growth allows you to inhabit this life fully, unapologetically, and with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that your presence, your voice, and your feelings are enough. Each day becomes an opportunity to practice this truth, to honor yourself, and to live a life aligned with authenticity, integrity, and emotional strength.